Do, do, do. La 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 la. Hey, it worked. Yay. Do, 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 Ken, that shot still looks off, doesn't it? Kind of tilted, maybe.
Screw up the.
It's fixed.
Yeah, it's on full manual now.
Sure you can by having it up there.
Yeah,
My
you,
computer.
you can't underexpose Ken. Go on, Ken. We love you.
Doesn't sound like it.
Did you say you can't underexpose Ken?
Yeah, there's no underexposing Ken.
It's true. I do glow in the dark. I'm really leaning into my Allen roll here.
Well, don't.
Person next to you has to be looking at GDAX, right?
Yeah, it's a requirement.
Button.
It's no good way to drink a beer from this spot.
Maybe you're the one that's not level.
Mm.
Do do.
Mm-hmm. See, this would normally be the podcast where we do our picks of the year, but no one's here.
Mm.
Can't do that.
Man, fancy.
Yeah.
Oh, I need a pick of the week. I don't like technology. I can't pick any of it.
All right, so I'm gonna put Josh.
That was on sale today.
Hmm? Are we live yet?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we are?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Do we have Josh with us yet? Oh.
On sale today.
Bonus one?
The play one, not the one with the assistance built in.
Oh.
But 140 is pretty good.
The Play 1 does not have assistance?
No, that's the Sonos One ONE.
Oh.
Play One is the older
Sure.
model.
Why not?
Oh, you can get it on Prime now. I mean, Josh can, but
Surely Josh can't.
Josh, can't hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can?
Can you hear us? Good?
You.
Yeah, you sound
Sure.
fine.
Oh.
I mean, as good as you sound normally,
Yeah.
which I mean is not great, but
Okay, I'm hating Skype.
hey guys, did you hear that Josh was not a fan of the new Skype? What don't you like about it?
How does it look?
How's it look?
Yeah.
I mean, you look fine. You look normal.
Enterprise, speakers.
Those are two different things, I think.
Budgie.
Josh, you took down the blue marker tape from your door frame.
I did. That was several weeks ago.
Oh.
Thank you for noticing.
You weren't on the podcast last week.
Yeah.
You jack
I was
wagon.
not.
Look at this huge rundown. Look at it.
I'm surprised it scrolls, to be honest.
It's true. We've had them before where they didn't scroll.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have Patreon and mailbag up there. That helps.
That's true.
I wrote like 50% of this podcast. So if you have any problems with the script, contact me.
The script.
I wrote like 50% of the podcast.
Fiance is limiting me to $300 a month to spend on guns, car stuff, and tech.
Well, that's not nearly enough. All 3 categories?
Or is it each?
Still.
If it's each, you got a chance.
Just invest it. Have you heard about Bitcoin? I hear it's hot. Up and coming.
Are we ready to do a show?
We is.
Seems unlikely.
I'm certainly not.
It's
So I really enjoyed going through the process of getting a second mortgage and explaining to them that I needed to invest in Bitcoin.
Did they really ask you why, though?
No, and I didn't actually get
I
a second
know.
mortgage to invest in Bitcoin.
I hope you invested when it was like 19.5.
No.
Oh, okay. Because it's
I
at
did not invest
14.5
at all.
right
What kind of
now.
idiot would do that?
Yeah.
Oh, my child with his cough.
Tell them to shut the hell up.
Does he have a man cold?
I've had this cough. How long have I had it now? Like 2.5 weeks?
At least.
no longer than that.
It's pretty annoying.
It is. I don't disagree.
Yes, is it
Whatever
least-
cold I had was horrific. I mean, it was 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm finally over it.
I feel okay otherwise. Like, I've never really had any other issues. It's just this, like, nagging cough. If I concentrate really hard, like when I was recording that podcast earlier today, when I was concentrating really hard, I can force myself to not cough. And I notice a little undulation change in my voice for that second. But
So let me ask you a question,
No.
Axe.
You gonna ask us a question?
We gonna? I thought we were doing like best of the year podcast
I thought that?
today.
When did you ever think that?
But because we do it every
year.
end of the year.
We just didn't plan any of
No
it.
one's here today. We
Yeah,
usually
Alan's
have
not
like
here, Charlie's not
everyone
here.
around.
It's us. We're all
yeah.
some really important.
Nah.
We're the only
Cam's
ones-
got the mineral oil. Ryan's got the checkbook, and I've got the money sponge.
Apple CEO Tim Cook saw his pay rise nearly 50% this year. It's nice. Plus, he has to fly on private jet. Did you see that story? Board of
No.
Directors requires Tim Cook to travel business and leisure travel on a private jet for safety concerns.
I wish I could do that.
Aren't private jets the ones that go down more often?
I think it's more safety of like him being kidnapped.
Because they only have like 95 billion in the bank.
Yeah. Did you see?
It's not a real poster for Han Solo, is it?
I hope not.
It's not a poster. It's just artwork.
With the Chrissy Teigen stuff today and the LA to Tokyo flight that turned around 4 hours in because they found someone who didn't have a ticket was on the plane. That stuff. People on Twitter were like, "What? You're rich? Why don't you take a private jet?" TruePod. It's like $300,000 or like $30,000 to do a private jet from LA to Tokyo. Maybe 300.
I was gonna say it
300.
might be 300.
It's like $300,000 to do that.
That's just pocket change, though. I mean, really? I mean, just
No.
Okay, it's
reach
like
in
an
your pocket
8-hour
and pull it
trip,
out.
and they're paying $1,500 an hour.
But I
Might be
mean,
paying the
you
pilot
need
that, but
you need a different aircraft for that because you need something that's ETOPS rated. It's not like flying across the country, right? Like,
No, I know that. I know that. It's like you've got a Gulfstream 3 or above, and it's $1,500 to $2,000 an hour to fly.
that seems
seems too
that's
cheap.
less than a first class ticket.
yeah. If
Okay,
it,
how many hours from
If
LA to
it's-
Tokyo?
if it's 12 hours,
Then $24,000.
That's like a first class ticket on some of those
on like
airlines doing
Emirates
that.
and stuff like that, that's like about that same
Yeah.
cost. But
I don't know.
Yeah, Emirates, but this is that you're paying for gas, you're paying for hours on the aircraft, and you're
So
paying for
when I
the
fly to
pilot.
CES, I should make.
I'm just saying
AMD.
that seems
it's only 3.5
remarkably low for
hours
me.
at Las Vegas for me. So it's only like $7,500 one way.
I have nothing to base my cost basis off of, but
And
so
it's the
I
same
Because I
cost-
can't
it's the
afford
same cost.
$2,000 an hour to fly.
well, neither can
somewhere.
I.
Is it
but-
the same cost per hour regardless of how many people are on the plane? Because then you amortize that. And really, it would be cheaper for AMD to fly all of us out on a private jet.
Yeah, I'm asking
if
you
you're
this.
all leaving from
I'm
one
asking
spot?
you this.
Yeah.
My brother actually was in charge of a charter.
No, I
aircraft.
believe you,
They
Josh.
had Hawker and Lear and I think Gulfstream 3. And so yeah, it's anywhere from 1,500 to pretty short stuff to I would imagine 3,000 for the
How many
big-
3,000
seats is in a
sounds pretty
Gulfstream
close.
3?
What?
How many seats? How many people are in a Gulfstream 3?
I think you can have like 10,
Because for like a 14-hour
10,
flight,
12.
do you have to pay like how many pilots do you have to pay? Like what's the on like the
Yeah, it's private.
on time sort
private,
of
who
rating
knows?
for that?
I have no idea.
So that would bring the cost
Two
up
pilots and their
substantially.
mothers.
Wait, where'd the mothers come from?
I don't know.
They're always there.
All right, let's do a show.
Hey, look, and our remote's working now. Knock on wood.
Yeah, I'm sure no problems will occur.
So are we going to? So it doesn't seem like we have a huge amount of stuff.
No, we don't.
Thanks, Josh.
It'll be a short one. But just, I mean, in general,
Yeah,
And
they make a good
so
point.
what do we want to fill?
nothing.
And I'm not talking Phil.
Probably
the
nothing.
chat makes a good point. You have to pay for the flight crew to return. It's not
Well, I
just
mean,
gonna, they're not just
usually
going to stay
in
in Tokyo
international
for 2
flights-
weeks.
They'll stay there.
Well, you have to
for
pay
2
for them to
weeks, yeah.
stay. I'm sure.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you have to pay that.
So a couple of days, yeah.
You're in Japan for like 2 weeks.
The Gulfstream 3's nautical range is only 3,400 nautical miles.
Of course,
Not
they started
enough-
fact-checking.
Not enough to get to Japan.
It is if you stop in Alaska.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. I just stop in the middle of the ocean. What about mid-air refueling?
No.
No.
Let's do that.
What could possibly go
Gulf Stream.
wrong?
I don't see any problem with that.
All right. So are we,
All right.
are we doing a go or no go on the end name rotation? Are we finally nixing this?
I mean, you should just play it by ear.
The chances are good that I will screw it up regardless. It doesn't really matter
Okay.
what we're going to do.
I'm okay with that.
All right, here we go. 3, 2. Everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 481, being recorded on December 27th, 2017. I'm Ryan Schrow.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And playing the role of Alvin Ventano tonight is Ken Addison.
Alan Maltavino.
I'm the understudy.
Yeah, yeah. Only 3 of us on this one. Well, plus Alex behind the board back there, and Jim hiding way in the back. You can't really see him, but
He doesn't acknowledge us anymore.
Jeremy's like on Canadian vacation. Alan is on a farm someplace. It's
Canadian
not-
Vacation
it's
was the
not
worst
dead,
of the
but-
National Lampoon's movie.
Yeah,
It just wasn't,
I mean,
wasn't
just
that
in general.
interesting.
It's
A lot of
true.
ice fishing.
It's the end of the year. It's our second to last podcast before CES. We do have another podcast that we'll record before we leave for that show. Because we don't need to get into CES predictions or that kind of BS, which inevitably is incorrect and boring, and we don't really say anything interesting anyway. So whatever. We're moving on. Welcome to the show. It's Josh. It's nice to have you back. How was your?
It's
how
nice
was your
to be
trip
back.
to Texas.
It was long, and
Was it strong?
it was long. I had 2 teenage boys. The going down there wasn't too bad because they slept most of the way,
Well,
and so did my wife, and so it was a lot of me time. And
yeah.
coming back was not nearly as much fun.
They were
Okay,
awake,
how
huh?
much farther is it? Are we in Denver yet?
Yeah.
What? We're all not even in Amarillo? What do you mean Amarillo's on the halfway point?
The way back
Yeah.
is always the worst.
Yeah, regardless of the trip, the
Yeah.
way home is like when we drive to Texas from here. How much driving is it for you to get to where you were going?
16 hours.
Okay, so it's
So
about
it's
15
about-
hours
yeah,
from
that's
us
about the
when we
same.
go when we drive to QuakeCon, for example. Yeah, it always seems to take longer the way back, but teleportation. It's the hot new thing, I think.
Just take the Hyperloop.
Exactly. We record the show on Wednesday nights, everybody. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at pcper.com/live. You're welcome to join us there. We have a chat room. You can hang out with all the other people watching. We watch the chat, respond to your questions and funny comments every once in a while. Some more than others. If you need a gentle reminder about when we're going to do a live stream, you can go to pcper.com/subscribe. You get this page here. It basically asks for your name, your email address, and we'll send you a note right before we do our live stream. So there you go, pcper.com/subscribe for that. And of course, we still have our ongoing Patreon campaign at patreon.com/pcper. This is your capability, your place, if you decide you want to directly contribute to PC Perspective and the reviews and the news and the videos and the podcasts that we do. It is a recurring thing. It could be anywhere from, it could be $1 a month. It could be $3, $5, $10, $50, $100, anything in between. And it goes directly to us and to the guys. And we greatly appreciate this. And it enables us to do a bunch of cool stuff. And as always is the case when we record the show, if you become a new patron or increase your patronage during the show, we will give you a shout out on the live stream. So we thank you very much in advance for that. As he goes to look, here is one from Sean. Sean SKOCZYLAS.
Yeah.
Kozillas? I bet there's several silent letters.
There's a lot
in
of
there.
silent letters in
Thanks, Sean S., for the pledge of $1. We greatly appreciate that. So thank you guys. What that enables us to do is things like the mailbag that we now record every week, which is one of us sitting there answering questions for you guys. It's been me, it's been Josh, it's been Alan. This week,
you can see me looking around the other monitor to see the TV behind it so I can look at the menu options.
Right. Yeah, there's Ken. He's waving at us. There he is. See? There he is. I do like the one comment we had that Jim pointed out to us this week about the Ken was doing some graphics card benchmarking behind us, and there's a scene in our benchmark suite where people get burned at the stake in The Witcher 3.
But they're only witches. I mean, they're not people.
Well, probably they're witches, right? Let's see if I can find it here. And they said, like, oh, the mailbag took a much darker turn all of a sudden when behind Ryan's right ear, there is people being burned at the stake.
Well,
I'm like,
you
well,
know, sometimes it has to happen.
Can't make an omelet without breaking
GPU
a few
science.
eggs, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that how
sorry.
it goes? Yeah, there they are. There they are burning at the stake.
I'm not even paying attention. It's just boring to me.
Yeah, you've burned so many people at the stake at this point.
You are truly cruel and unusual.
Yeah.
That's what they said
Heavy
in high school.
on the unusual.
Oh, well. So that's the mailbag. You can find that on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/PCPer. Although we do post them on PCPer.com as well. Let's jump into stuff. Reviews. We're full of content from Josh this week. He basically nonstop
Wrote the entire
on his
thing.
Trip. His entire
I
trip.
overtook the site with my writing skills
Yeah,
on the
but
road.
with
I
a Z.
dictated to my children, and they
Skills with
ignored
a Z.
everything I said, and they didn't upload it. And so there we have it. Just pretend
Oh,
that
children.
they uploaded it all.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I assume they'll get around to it in the next couple of days or so.
Sure.
In the meantime,
Let me ask you this before
okay.
we go in.
All right. Yes, Josh.
Was that Kylo Ren's topless body, or was that CGI'd in?
That was him.
That was me.
Dude, that guy looks so weird.
Why? What?
I mean, he was the love interest of Lena Dunham in Girls.
Yeah.
So
That show.
I mean, did
Your
he have
favorite
these
show,
scars
Ken.
on his body or
Yeah,
something, right?
absolutely.
From the
my favorite
lightsaber?
show.
Did he have scars from like a lightsaber attack? Was that what it was?
from his face.
He had scars on his face, but didn't he have scars on his body too? I assume, Josh, you somehow paused it, freeze framed, and studied it later. I don't know.
He just
No,
took a
I-
mental photo.
did
Not
not.
the case. All right. Let's talk about the Titan V, the box of which sits in front of us again. This time, part 3, where Ken dove into the world of deep learning.
I
The
took a
first-
shallow dive into the world of deep learning.
Oh God.
I'm just
Ken's first
sorry.
attempt at learning comes as we basically. So the Titan V was a card. It was initially presented like that's its goal is for deep learning, machine learning, AI stuff, right? But we knew for us that was going to be our steepest roadblock, if you will. To
Yeah,
like
we've never
figuring out how
exactly
to do
done
it.
any of that. I can run benchmarks blindfolded, gaming benchmarks and synthetic benchmarks.
So that's what we
blindfolded.
did. We did the games first. We did compute second, which is stuff that's, you know, a little bit more complex, but still a lot of off-the-shelf Luxmark testing.
Still using Windows.
Yeah, still using Windows. This time we have to dive into Linux. Oh, God, can you imagine? And use a
Yes, I
bunch
can.
of libraries and things that we're just not familiar with. So it was a much steeper learning curve for us to get around to understand this stuff. But you did it. You did some benchmarking with this stuff. And what's important about the Titan V is that it uses Volta architecture, as the V would indicate, which means it has these tensor cores in it.
Which aren't only good for TensorFlow.
Right.
As you might think, not knowing a lot about this stuff. There's a framework called TensorFlow, and they're called tensor cores.
Right.
So you go, okay, well, those are probably built to accelerate a specific workload. No. A tensor is a mathematical object.
Okay. It is
It's a multi-dimensional array.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the slide here tells me in some capacity. So basically, what we did was we have a different platform for this. We're using a Threadripper system. This is something that was just convenient to us, something we could load down with a lot of memory.
Yeah.
These machine learning benchmarks require a lot of system memory. You know, NVIDIA's testing used 128 gigs of memory. We only really had the ability to put 64 in any one system.
As it turns out, the DDR4 shortage affects us too.
Yeah. And fast storage is also important for
Yeah.
machine learning benchmarking, right? So we wanted to make sure we were using a little bit different test bed than we would for our gaming tests, where they're much less sensitive to that type of stuff. So what was the setup process like?
So a couple weeks ago at what conference was that NVIDIA did the keynote at?
Oh, I don't know.
Supercomputing. It was at Supercomputing.
Oh, I thought it was like some weird NIT something.
No, that's
something.
where they announced the Titan V.
Yeah.
But at
That's what you're talking about.
Supercomputing,
Okay.
they announced NVIDIA GPU Cloud.
Okay.
Which we didn't really pay a lot of attention to at the time
Sure.
because, they were presenting to a very specific group of researchers and scientists, and wasn't exactly something that we needed to learn about immediately. But it's actually pretty cool. So what NVIDIA GPU Cloud is essentially NVIDIA's attempt to create turnkey development solutions for applications like TensorFlow, like Caffe, for scientific applications, for all of this different stuff. So it's based upon Docker, and what they do is they have each month they release a Docker container for each application. So we're using the NVIDIA GPU Cloud 17.12 Docker container.
When you say each application, how many applications are there?
I don't know the full list. There's maybe like 15 to 20 at this point.
Okay,
Maybe a
so
little
more
less
than
than
I
that.
thought. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
It's a lot of deep learning
So that's
stuff.
responsibility on their part to upkeep
Yeah.
this stuff as well.
So essentially what you get is a containerized environment that you can run on top of. They usually recommend Ubuntu 16.04 with the latest kernel on it. And you install the latest NVIDIA GPU drivers on your local machine, and then you run this Docker instance, which has CUDA environment set up, has, in this case, TensorFlow set up, automatically optimized for the newest features of the Titan V, like the Tensor Cores, which hasn't been mainstreamed back into the TensorFlow project yet.
Right.
So you have NVIDIA optimize and tweak development settings for each individual application so that you can just start to import your code and run it. You don't have to worry about compiling. You don't have to worry about optimizing certain environment variables. It's strictly meant so you can load this container and start running your TensorFlow code, or start running your Caffe 2 code, or start running whatever.
So we use those systems to test the Titan V and the Titan XP. What did you have to do for the AMD card?
For the AMD side, they don't really have anything like that, but they do have their ROCm initiative, which is
ROCm.
their Radeon Open Compute. I don't know what the M stands for, actually.
I don't know either.
Rock'em sock'em.
Exactly. So they have a lot of decent documentation about getting stuff up and running. In this case, we're using the HIP TensorFlow port.
Okay.
Because TensorFlow is an application written in CUDA. There's no OpenCL port, at least official. A couple of people have tried, but they're not very far along / abandoned projects.
Okay.
So NVIDIA or AMD used their HIP platform to translate TensorFlow, which is CUDA application, to run on OpenCL on AMD GPUs.
Okay.
And in that, there's definitely a performance hit lost in that
Oh,
translation.
sure, yeah.
As you can see in this chart here.
So, okay, when we look at these benchmarks, look at these results, you have TensorFlow and you have ResNet 50, ResNet 152. What are these tests actually attempting to do?
So these tests are they're benchmarks, so they're not training a full neural net, but they're
Right.
using data from the ImageNet data set, the ImageNet Large Scale Visual Recognition Challenge 2012, which is sort of one of the very common data sets that people use for developing neural networks at this point and benchmarking them. So essentially, it's just a large set of seemingly random images and descriptions of what those images contain. So it'll be like,
Okay.
this contains a dog, this contains a fish. It gets a little more
This
specific
contains
than
a
that,
Josh.
but you can go on the website and pull the specific list of all of the stuff they classify. But
Okay.
it's a image set meant to train a model so that you can identify quote unquote anything in a photo.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're going for here. And the metric we get is images per second. So this is images a second that are trained into the neural net.
Okay. Higher is better.
Yes, higher is better.
Okay. So ResNet 50, we're showing Titan V. There's also two sets of results, FP32 and FP16. FP32 is using the standard CUDA cores, if you will, and the standard stream processors of these devices, which indicates, like, you can kind of see, like, Titan XP, the orange line to the blue line of the Titan V. There's an increase there, but not an enormous jump
It's
forward.
about what we saw in anything else, single precision. So if we looked
gaming
at
even.
OpenCL
Yeah.
rendering, gaming, all of that stuff, we saw about that 15% performance.
Now, the FP16 results are the same. It's the same data set.
Mhm.
It's just a different compute model with which to accomplish the task.
Yeah.
And these are actually using the tensor cores in that computation, correct?
Yeah. So the way the environment's set up in the NVIDIA GPU Cloud image for TensorFlow, the latest couple images, they've sort of modified the code to allow FP16 training, which wasn't in the initial code. And that FP16 training code path uses the tensor cores
Okay.
on the GPU.
So then you get a jump from, again, even though it's FP32, FP16, it's the same data set, it's the same workload. Instead of getting 295, you get 531 images per second, right? Or in batches of 64, which is how many images are sent into the algorithm at one time, right? It goes from 268 to 469.
Yeah, so that's the other important variable here is that researchers doing deep learning will train with as large as of batch size as they possibly can, because if you're feeding more images into the training model at the same time, then it's faster. It's a parallel process, right?
Right.
So batch size is limited by hardware. In our case, it was very limited by the amount of RAM we had in the machine. So we only had 64 gigs. So we could only hit certain batch sizes. And if you look at the results, we could only hit certain batch sizes we could hit larger batch sizes on FP16 than we could FP32.
Got it.
Because if you think about it, an FP16 integer has
Sure.
takes up less space than FP32. That's kind of part of the point, right?
Got it. So we tested. So is there anything significant in like ResNet 50, ResNet 152, GoogleNet, other than these are different data sets or different?
Not particularly. We just were training against
not
different
data sets,
models
but
to
models,
make sure that we saw similar performance gains among all
It's
of
pretty
them.
obvious looking at these results, like where the benefit is. The FP16 performance is there. The Vega Frontier edition that we use, the liquid cooled variant, is not competitive in this space at all. And I'd be curious how much of this is non-optimized software. It's clearly not just a huge hardware deficit. And I'd be very interested to talk with, and we've asked AMD, and they just haven't gotten back to us yet with like why are your results like this? We follow your steps. We're working on things the way we're supposed to be working on it. You're out there talking about your capabilities in the machine learning space. This is not indicative of somebody who is taking, like, you're an order of magnitude slower than a Titan XP.
Yeah, and
Right?
and if you think about it, the Vega is very good at FP16.
Yeah.
So you should
It
be able to
should
see
be,
large gains there as well.
Yeah,
using
you're
high
right.
precision
You're right.
compute.
And you also ran Cafe 2, which is another deep learning staple, as you call it. Which Cafe 2 is different than TensorFlow. How?
It's a different framework. This one developed by Facebook. TensorFlow is developed by
Okay.
Google. So it's a different it's different code essentially. So
Yeah.
they're both Python programs, and you're calling either the Caffe2 or the TensorFlow framework, and then their own code paths essentially. But they're trying to achieve the same thing. In this case, training a neural net with the ResNet 50 model.
Got it. So again,
Similar stuff
here. You know, we go from 274 images per second up to 553 peak, right? With the Titan V. So, you know, this is the beginning of us figuring some of this stuff out. I think it's a really good beginning step of how do we measure machine learning. We've already been reached out to by several different people, like, hey, you know, I have these things I like to benchmark. Here's how we can do this. We've had conversations with people at NVIDIA and starting those conversations with AMD about how to test this stuff going forward. And it really made sense that we needed to get to this with the Titan V because it was its primary focus.
Yeah, when you have fixed function for a certain task, it usually makes sense to test that.
Josh, do we know how much of the die is actually like taken up by these tensor cores? I'm curious about that, right? Because if you look at it, like the tensor cores, if you look at this metric here, are running, you know, almost 100% faster, you know, 80% faster than the FP32 cores, the standard CUDA cores, right? Is this indicative of, hey, as it turns out, fixed function units are going to be, or more maybe closer to fixed function units are still going to be better for this, and it give credence to the idea of Google's TPU that they're building versus continuing to push in on GPU based machine learning models?
How many questions you want to ask?
Just three.
Many. Okay. First of all, we don't know how much the tensor cores take. Secondly, you're absolutely correct. They're not exactly fixed function units, but they are more simple in how they handle math than floating point.
They're more
or,
specifically tuned,
GPU
I
stuff.
guess I would say.
Yeah. And so, you know, because they only do a certain amount of operations, you can make them smaller and you can have more of them without impacting your TDPs and die space. And how important this is going to be, well, it depends on where the market goes, because the stuff that they're using now for driving, automation, just understanding, hey, you know, some security camera sees there's a guy in a crowd that pulled a gun. You know, they're going to identify these things. Even with the group that I work with West Incorporated, we started using TensorFlow for dolphin analysis. So dolphins all have, just like killer whales, they have different dorsal fins. And so we're using TensorFlow to identify individuals so that when somebody takes a picture out in the Gulf of Mexico and they post it on Facebook, and then we could possibly grab that, we could say, hey, that's, you know, specimen 1A 1999, whatever.
Oh,
sure.
These things
call
are
him Bob.
becoming far more common because images are everywhere. And just ask the social media people. Just ask those Snapchatters who are posting 500,000 selfies over a couple of years, what image recognition will do. And TensorFlow is, tensor cores are outstanding for this kind of work.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I know one
You
of
like
the
my
few
kid coughing in the background?
That's okay. I'm doing it on the side of the call too. So
Yeah.
when we were looking into this and asking some people at NVIDIA, Ryan, I know one of the few sort of technical details we got about these tensor cores is that they can do 64 FMA per clock. That's a very deep, like, is that deep or wide?
wide, I would say.
That's very wide
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things compared to something like a CUDA core doing this math.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe.
And you said FMA. That's a fixed point multiply add?
Yes.
Used multiply
Used
add?
multiply
Yeah,
add.
yeah.
Something like that.
What's interesting is the reason the way I posited the question to you before is like a lot of people have been saying, you know, NVIDIA's been riding this wave of machine learning up to their current stock price, and now it's just like, okay, you know, Google's now buying engineers up from people.
Google's on their second generation of tensor.
Right. So, like,
Processing
will
units.
NVIDIA have to get away from using the GPU for machine learning if they want to continue to make machine learning their thing, right?
Yeah.
And it seems more
You
like
know, they can just throw out another SKU.
they could, but what I was getting at before
because
was like the
they
dice
could have
sizes.
fewer GPU cores and then rack up the tensor
Correct.
cores.
But at what point does it make sense to just have tensor cores, right? If you're only doing compute for these specific models, right? Like I'm trying to figure out what the performance per square millimeter die is on those tensor cores versus on the CUDA cores, and then how do you balance that going forward if you want to make Tesla, machine learning specific products?
I think a lot of the issue is that they don't exactly know what the final form a lot of this stuff will take. So I mean, and there's still so much research going
Not
on.
even my final form.
There's still so much research going on that maybe we discover tensors aren't the appropriate thing to use from a mathematical perspective. So you don't want to go full into
exactly.
tensors.
It's the bad thing is like, hey, I'm going to design an entire tensor core, tensor thing. And suddenly someone comes up with an algorithm that will actually utilize, something a little bit more general.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're always going to have a balance of, more general processing cores with specialized tensor cores, because it just kind of makes sense that way. People are going to do interesting things with software.
Yeah.
And the more flexibility you have in certain situations, the better off you're going to be. Because not everything is going to be, I'm going to identify this. I'm going to identify this. I'm going to identify this.
I feel like we're within reaching distance of a point where like audio processing became very fixed function, right? To the fact where you have these extremely low power phones that now have fixed function audio to listen for keywords that, do all these things that like that I feel like for the vast majority of the machine learning stuff that we're doing, we will find that answer. And at that point, now what do you become, right? So that's got to be NVIDIA's risk in all of this, is that becomes the thing. Somebody like Google or Facebook or whoever decides to make their own chip. ARM makes some variant of it, and now,
well, I mean,
their
if you look at
here's the problem with that.
Doesn't help anymore.
You're addressing one area, and say somebody wants to address 3 other things in one photo. So you're not just identifying kind of one thing. Maybe you're going forward and identifying behaviors of people that are in the photo.
Yeah.
And so you've got a whole lot more complexity.
What I don't know is if that would equate to different processing models or not, or if it's just the same processing model with a different software layer on top of it, right? Like that's what I don't know. Like we look at these particular learning, neural networks and stuff, and how, like, what percentage of machine learning is based on these 2 or 3 specific models, right? And my guess would be it's pretty high currently. Will that change?
Okay, when has data and computation ever just stayed the same in the past 30 years without people adding to it or doing things to it?
I gave the example of audio, and I would posit that that's a pretty standard one now, right? Graphics is still changing somewhat, but I can't think of any other examples.
Looking at this another way, your argument is that NVIDIA is built around, part of your argument is that NVIDIA is built around GPU expertise, and what happens if we don't necessarily need GPUs for deep learning anymore?
Yeah.
I think what you're discounting is NVIDIA's software expertise and the sort of stranglehold they have over everything with CUDA right now.
Yep.
So they still own the software stack. So if they can iterate on fixed function hardware and integrate them with GPUs or release them as additional products, whatever they do with them, then I think as long as they're keeping up with the pace of that stuff, that their current strangle on the software ecosystem will still help them. Because I don't think
I agree.
I don't think Google is ready to reinvent the wheel necessarily. They're just they're happy to use CUDA as a platform.
I think they pretty close.
They absolutely could.
Because that would be my next question was going to be like, how many companies do you think will actually, at the end of the decade, have input on machine learning? Is it going to be 5 companies that essentially control all of that? Google, Facebook, Apple, whatever, right? And if so, then they're probably going to be more willing to go their own way than if there were 100 companies that needed to do this
Sure.
stuff on a large scale, and in which case NVIDIA would potentially benefit greater from that.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. At the end of the
So
day.
let me ask you this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, have you watched Dark Mirror? Any of the episodes?
No.
Black Mirror?
Black Mirror, yeah.
No. Still no.
Oh,
I've
so
been
anyway,
meaning to.
This would be a good story.
there
I
was
can tell.
one that they basically recorded a woman for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and then kind of
I'm into it.
translated that into an AI program, and they kind of whipped her into shape so that she would do the things that AIs would not necessarily do for that individual. Like, this person likes toast a certain way. This person likes these clothes in a certain way. Things that AIs can't do without a ton of training. And so my point here
Mhm,
is
getting
we
to it.
don't know where this kind of learning is going to go. I mean, I'm not saying that NVIDIA is going to, brain scan you and, get your preferences for every damn thing.
Sure.
But I'm talking about, these are new problems that they're looking for solutions for, and it
Yeah.
may not just be these tensor cores.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So does that make sense?
I mean, it does, but everything we're saying is may or could or might,
Absolutely.
right? And I don't think any of the three of us are experienced enough in the machine learning fields to make. You did set up an NVIDIA cloud client. I get it.
I ran these benchmarks. I understand.
It's really just to define the future. But we've talked about that for much longer than expected. But hey, it was a short episode, so I figured
I can already see pictures of the
expand
week
out.
on the rundown.
It's true. It's true. Before we move on to the next story, we did have 3 Patreon updates. I like this one. Witches Be Crazy just pledged $27. So thank you. Awesome. Witches Be Crazy. I like that one. Lou Skunts just pledged $3. And Chronarch edited their pledge from $7 to $8. So thank
Nice.
you guys, all 3 of you, very much.
Nice.
Super, super awesome.
Very nice.
All right, real quickly, Lee posted a review of the Seasonic Prime Ultra 850 watt titanium power supply. So if you want Ultra and titanium in the same power supply, I'm not exactly sure what that entails.
Could we fit
but
like a
they have
Max in there somewhere, maybe?
That's
Plus?
probably what they're going to announce at CES.
Sweet.
It's the Ultra Platinum Max Plus.
Titanium.
Yeah, so it's a titanium level efficiency, which is the 80 plus organization's highest rating, which obviously doesn't make a lot of sense anymore because it's like
Yeah.
90 something, was it 97% efficiency or something for these units? Fully modular at that. This is available in 1000, 850, 750, 650. It's an impressive looking beast for certain.
Well, scroll up a little bit.
Okay, yes.
Wow, look at those cables.
Ooh, flat.
That's
Just
a
like
lot
a
of
mass.
connectors.
Of wires coming out of there.
It's not a mess. It's clean and neat and
Mass.
well.
No,
mass.
Oh, mass.
M-A-S-S.
Yes. No, I'm with you on that. I'll agree
So
with that.
isn't Seasonic the guys that only just recently went to digital power control?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
Prime
Prime.
was the first one that did it. Yeah. So and they announced that at last year's CES is when I think they showed it to us the first time.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
They
So
did pretty good with analog for a long time.
they
but-
did.
I think they're doing pretty good with digital too.
Yeah. And
Yeah, they seem to be.
they at the time they basically came to me and said, we didn't want to make the switch until we were sure that the digital would meet the same quality as our analog, right? And we went through a lot of this stuff with the tolerance load regulation that they have implemented and that type of stuff. These are impressive power supplies. They're not cheap. Don't get me wrong. Although it does have, 6 PCIe cables, right?
It's not nearly enough for Alan.
That have 8+6 on them. Oh no, this is only the 850 model, right? So
Yeah,
I
scroll back
assume-
up. Scroll back up.
Okay, yep.
Is this the Cthulhu edition? Elder gods come to
Let me
power
look at
your
them
PC.
caps.
Hope your
Yeah.
cable routing is good. There
Those
you go.
caps are acceptable.
Caps with barcodes are always a good sign.
You can really tell if there was a blown.
Yeah.
There was a nice thing on the previous page. It comes with an ATX tester.
Okay.
It looks like.
Yes, I did see that.
So this is for Bitcoin mining then.
Well,
Nah. So, what was the review like? Editor's Choice Award. Weaknesses, none
None noted.
noted.
None.
Ultra high efficiency, 80 plus titanium, quiet, high quality 135 millimeter fan with fluid dynamic bearing, a 12-year manufacturer's warranty.
Wow.
Multi GPU technology supported, dedicated PCIe connectors, fully modular cable. Now this is a $209.90 MSRP power supply for the
Yeah.
850 model.
That's
$259 for the 1000.
That's up there.
So that's obviously expensive.
But 12-year warranty.
But a 12-year warranty, yeah.
That's-
Divide
Yeah,
that by
you're going to
12.
replace every single other goddamn part in your product, in
That's
your
true.
computer,
Maybe not your chassis.
before that runs out of warranty.
The Prime Ultra series, which is this one. Oh, let's see. Let's pick
Yeah,
a
my
time.
computer's one is updating right now.
Let's pick a time of not now. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, I usually go to the bottom of the list.
Why put it off today when you can put it off?
The
12 days
Prime
from
Ultra
now.
series uses an upgraded fan with lower max RPM for very quiet operation.
Yeah, apparently this can do the stuff where if it's not drawing a lot of power, it will just turn the fan off. It
Got
has
it.
like the hybrid fan stuff.
Got it.
Which I
So,
appreciate.
Editor's Choice Award, that's a good thing from Lee, as we are still one of the few outlets still doing dedicated power supply reviews. Very, very much worth checking out
Because we care.
because we care about your power needs or something to that effect. All right, next, Asus ROG Strix GTX 1080 Ti
Take it away, Josh.
review, top of the pack.
So here I reviewed everything,
There it is.
and I give it the Kitty Award
Is
because
it good? Get a
it's
good
so
award?
soft,
And fluffy.
right?
This car, so Josh's review of the Asus ROG Strix GTX 1080 Ti is that it is soft. I'm not sure that's a positive. I'm not sure they would take
And it's
that
got
as
a motor
positive.
running all the time. Otherwise, it purrs constantly.
So, okay, as it turns out, Ken is the one who actually did this review as well. 1080 Ti, overshadowed by the Titan XP, overshadowed by the Titan V, still flagship GTX branded card, kind of non-Titan card.
I
guess.
think I called it like the highest performing gaming GPU.
Okay,
Because obviously, while you can game on both Titans, they're not exactly targeted towards gamers,
yeah.
like enabling the professional workflow.
I would say the
stuff.
Titan XP,
Yeah, but they
They
enable the
have to-
Quadro features in the driver, which makes it
Sure.
a little more professional oriented than it used to be.
also made Star Wars editions to go with the Battlefront 2 release. So it's kind of like, you can't deny the gaming culture.
I'm a Star Wars researcher.
I'm a Star Wars rendering fan. Yeah. So anyway, the GTX 1080 Ti actually launched like back in March,
Yeah,
I think it was.
yeah.
We're almost on a year, and that was launched
Like
like 7 or 8 months after the GTX 1080, right?
Oh, like 12 months.
Yeah.
No, the GTX 1080 came out like in
So
June.
would you say
right?
that
I thought it was
the
like March.
1080
I could be
Ti is the most significant GPU launch this year?
If the alternative is that or the Vega 64?
I mean, Titan
right?
V
yeah.
is kind. Nah, it's not very significant.
I would
Yeah,
still
that's
have to
just
say
insane.
it's
I'd
significant from an interesting perspective.
I'd still have to get the
but
1080 Ti because it's still the leader in performance. It was the leader not by a small margin when it came out,
Yeah,
right? The Titan XP came out and kind of stole some of it, but it is a $1,200 MSRP instead of a $699
you
MSRP.
shouldn't buy Titan XP.
But you shouldn't buy that if you can. If you
Only
can buy
idiots
one of
buy
these.
Titan XPs.
What about ones that look like Darth Vader?
No, those are cool.
Oh,
We should
okay.
buy
Good,
all
good,
of
good.
those.
Good, great.
Still
great.
available as the every time I install the driver, it likes to advertise to me.
Yeah, that's true. This is, by the way, so the Asus ROG Strix that we're looking at this is it in comparison to the reference design.
It's
of Founders.
huge.
It's longer, it's taller, it's wider.
It's
All the things
let's
Josh
see,
looks for.
1.23 inches longer, 0.9 inches taller, and takes up an extra slot. We call it a
You know, the
2.5
only
slot.
thing that I look out for anymore
No.
is if the liquor store handles
Handles. Yes. Continue thought.
old speckled hen.
I don't know what is he talking
It's the
about
only
now?
joy.
Talking
It's the
about
only
beer.
joy in my life. Old speckled hen.
Anyway,
I had it on tap once.
what
It
is
was
he?
life changing. Life changing.
What the? You on cough medicine?
There
Two?
you go,
No, that
old
would be my
speckled
child.
hen.
One day he will
So-
get over his cold.
Ken talked about this in the
One day.
review. The Strix brand and the Matrix brand kind of merged. And
Yeah,
they only had one now,
They
right?
destroyed the Matrix brand at the 10,000 series launch, but I didn't necessarily
The
realize
1,000 series.
the 10,000
Not the
series.
10,000
Eh,
series.
whatever.
But they merged some of the same feature sets too. Like this has
Yeah, Strix kinda used to be
the
a-
fan
like-
connectors and stuff.
Strix used to be kind of middle of the road, and now it's the highest end option. And it's not like they just took out features; they gave Strix way more features
Right.
to make it the flagship offering.
It's got LEDs
Pretty tasteful RGB
and
LEDs.
RGBs. It's
I
got
mean,
the fan connect
yeah, I really
capability.
I really like the fan headers where you can hook chassis fans up to your graphics card, so they're sort of follow the fan curve of the GPU. So if you have front intake fans, which are providing air directly into your GPU,
Sure.
then you could hook them up to that and not necessarily have to worry about all this custom fan tuning software and
Sure.
all of that stuff.
2 8-pin power connectors, beefy ass heatsink with heat. How many heat pipes? Did you count the heat pipes?
6, I believe.
Oof, 6 heat pipes.
It's a lot of heat pipes. It's heavy.
It does have DVI output. Somebody in the chat
it
said the
does.
only question is, does it have DVI output? The answer is yes.
I had a reference to an ATI earlier this year in my home PC, and I have that Korean monitor. The only thing it has is dual link DVI.
Yep.
I was severely disappointed.
Yeah. So this, because it doesn't have a blower style cooler, it doesn't need the extra exhaust vents for it. But like, I mean, look at that picture. Look, the mounting bracket for it just makes everything else enormous. By
I don't
comparison.
like the trend of very tall graphics cards. I think long is fairly fine as long as you're not getting to you're not getting to 14 inches long.
Yeah.
I think 2.5 slots is all right because anyone only usually puts one add-in card in their machine. If we're talking about the vast majority of people, maybe you have an SSD or a capture card in there, but you can
Sure.
space that out. But the tall really starts to limit you. Like I have a Corsair Carbide 200 or whatever, 240 Air 240, which is the MATX one. It has a very it can hold a very long one, so to speak, but it has room for a very long graphics card, but the clearance to the side window is absolutely nothing. You can fit like a reference NVIDIA cooler in there, but nothing else.
Got it.
So it's disappointing to see cards like this that are super tall and kind of aren't accommodating to a lot of those form factors.
In terms of what we evaluated, so we've already looked at 1080 Ti performance. It's a well-known thing, well understood. So we looked at things like sound levels. It's a very, very quiet card. That massive heatsink dissipates a lot of heat, means the fans don't have to spin until it even gets to like 58, 59 degrees Celsius.
It's 55.
Is that what they say?
55 is the number.
When we were watching the temp go up, it didn't turn on. The fans didn't turn on until 58, 59. But it
I
might just be
mean,
on how it's being
lag
monitored.
at that point.
And even when they are spinning under full load, it's at 34.5 dB, which is near our sound floor at the office, right? It's, within
We don't
2 or
get
3
much lower
decibels.
than that.
You compare that to the 1080 Ti, Founders Edition, 39.1. You compare that to the Vega 64 Air, which is 46.4 decibels. You have, so what is that? Every 6 decibels is a doubling of noise level, right?
Yeah.
So is it 3 times as loud? I don't know. I don't want to do that math. But it's very quiet graphics card. In terms of clock speeds, it actually runs really well too at stock.
1923 is what it was.
1923
maintaining.
stock. So no, I guess you should point out it's the OC
This is the
model.
OC model. They sell a not OC model, an OC model for some stupid reason. Just two
Because the
SKUs to
different-
have in the channel.
And the difference is like,
$10.
yeah, and it's like 10 megahertz or something like that, right?
I didn't look at the actual.
It's like
difference
10 or
between the
15
two.
megahertz.
But
It's a useless thing.
You're gonna just take the sliders in GPU Tweak 2 or whatever Precision
Move 'em
X
over.
OC you're using anyways.
Yeah.
So
So it's interesting. So it leveled off at 1923 megahertz, and the temperature was like 64 degrees Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
So well under where your reference / Founders Edition cards go. We overclocked it with a plus 70 offset.
yeah, this is a very quick overclock.
Yeah, I mean,
Just to
with
see
quick
if
testing.
there was additional headroom to get.
and in which case we were now running at over 2 gigahertz.
Yeah,
on the clock speed.
2023 I think is about where we
And our temp
maintained.
still only got up to like 67 degrees Celsius.
Didn't really get any.
Yeah,
hot.
so we went from 1881 average, that includes the
ramp up.
the ramp,
yeah.
up to 2024. So our average clock speed was 2024 after just moving these sliders over. Pretty impressive stuff. Power consumption wise,
Hey, guess what? It uses some more power than the Founders Edition.
It does, yes. but about 20, 30 watts or so more
Yeah.
than the Founders Edition.
Still less than the Vega 64 air cooled
Yeah,
card,
so
the
it's-
reference cards.
yeah, it is.
I mean, it was a little under 300 watts.
Yeah.
I'd call it under 300 watts is what I would call it.
Yeah, that's fair. And the Vega 64 Air's 300 watt setting is probably 5 or so watts higher on average than that
Yeah.
in our testing. So interesting look at stuff there.
Shouldn't exactly be a surprise if you're looking at this graphics card.
Yeah. And from a performance standpoint, it's slightly faster than 1080 Ti,
Yeah.
right?
So Grand Theft Auto 5 doesn't really show any gains. It's still a very CPU bound game,
Yeah,
even
it
at
tends to
4K,
be.
which is crazy. Hitman, we saw like a 7 or 8 FPS difference, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And
If all this testing was done at 4K,
yeah.
because we thought that's what made the
I
most
mean,
sense.
it was hitting what 82, 83 FPS at 4K.
4K,
So
right.
I mean, testing lower.
And The
than
Witcher
that.
3 was hitting just over 70, right? So
Yeah.
it took it from like 68 to 72, moderate increases over a reference Founders Edition, but you're doing it at a much cooler temp, much quieter
Yeah.
sound level. Now it is expensive though.
Yeah, but it's less. It's. I'm gonna say it's less expensive than it used to be, which isn't true. But the Delta is less expensive than it used to be. So
Okay.
reference cost for a 1080 Ti should be $700. Currently, the
Should be.
cheapest 1080 Ti I could find on Newegg was a Gigabyte blower design, which wasn't the reference. The Founders
Wasn't the Founders Edition.
wasn't the Founders edition. Was their own blower cooler. $740.
Eesh.
And the non-OC version of this, which is the only one in stock, came in at $800. So that's a $60 difference.
Okay.
However, the MSRP of this card is it's supposed to be $780. So the markup isn't as high as the markup for the lower end, if that makes any sense. So where
Sure.
if everything was at MSRP, it would be an $80 price difference. Now it's only a $60 price difference. So it makes more sense to go from blower to go to this triple fan setup with more features and more overclockability, quieter.
Yeah.
Depending on your case, I mean, blower.
Obviously, it's
blower
still a
coolers
lot of
work better
money,
for some
but
cases.
I see the argument there of it just being
If
a
you were going to buy a
better
$700
option.
GPU, you could probably buy an $800 GPU.
don't be such a cheap ass, Josh. Spend
I
the extra,
can't.
spend the extra $100.
I say this as
Dude, I've still got medical bills to pay.
yeah, but you're not going to buy a
can't buy-
$700 GPU.
Kids
So
coughing in there.
No, we don't
racking
care.
up the
I'm
bills.
gonna pay a surgeon and an anesthesiologist.
You don't need
with that
anesthesia. Past that part, go straight to
You
the
got
surgeon
bourbon,
only.
right?
It's fine.
I just got to get a $15 hammer from Ace.
15.
Knock him out.
That's a little much, but
you don't need a
fair
quality
enough.
hammer to knock someone out.
All right, let's talk about a couple of other things before we get to our picks of the week here. One, this was a news story that kind of cropped up through the day today. NVIDIA, this is a CNBC story, which we don't put on here a lot, but CNBC.
I mean, it showed up in the on Reddit a couple
Yeah.
of days ago.
Oh, was it a couple days ago?
At this point, yeah.
NVIDIA made a change to how it lets developers use its chips, and some folks aren't happy. So,
Number one, the photo of that is a car part, which doesn't apply to any of
that's
this.
true. He is showing a Drive PX or something like that on that system. So essentially, what NVIDIA did was they updated the EULA for their driver, right? Because it's the only place where they would be able to present a EULA, I guess,
For the driver download,
for the driver download before you can
which is
start to download
different
it.
than the driver
Install.
install, I would imagine.
I guess, I don't know.
Because the download URL has a lot of references to downloading the driver as
Got it.
opposed to installing the driver.
Got it. So the update, quoting here, which was made when NVIDIA introduced the Titan V GPU earlier this month, is intended to deter the use of those GPUs inside data centers. So basically, the EULA is changed in a way to prevent people from using Titans or GeForce cards.
For
In-
for GeForce cards.
It doesn't say Titans.
It's the GeForce driver EULA, but Titan cards are still GeForce cards. They're not GTX
Sure.
cards.
It's,
They're
whatever,
GeForce
it's the same
cards.
EULA that pops
Yes.
up. Okay. To prevent those cards from being used in data center implementations, insinuating that you should use Tesla, I guess, yeah, not Quadro, but Tesla cards in those situations. It says the change does not apply to NVIDIA's Tesla line of GPUs, which are available from cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft.
And they explicitly permit blockchain operations.
Yeah, that one's a little odd. They do say, like, with the exception for blockchain operations, it's okay to use GeForce GPUs for data center-based blockchain stuff, which I think is maybe because they realize there's hundreds of thousands of video cards out here on the wild in data centers running blockchain and cryptocurrency mining. So they had no choice but to do that. But so they talk about Reddit, trying to make sense of the language. Some critical responses allege that NVIDIA is making the change to compel customers to use more expensive Tesla GPUs instead of lower cost processors, which it absolutely is doing. It's not alleged. That's why they would do that. An NVIDIA spokesperson in an email highlighted several reasons that companies would prefer Tesla GPUs in data centers. That includes support, longer life expectancy. But this is kind of interesting. The email said that if customers want to use Titan or GeForce GPUs in data centers, they can talk with NVIDIA's sales department. We expect that working together with our user base on a case-by-case basis, we'll be able to resolve any customer concerns, which I can imagine that being anything from discounts on Tesla cards to make them more affordable and more appealing instead of you buying a bunch of Titans, or, oh, okay, we'll let you do it this one time. Here's a release form of something. So you were particularly interested in this discussion, I guess I would say.
What? No, me? Never.
So the debate is, why would NVIDIA do it now?
Well,
And what is the risk of them doing it? What are they attempting to do?
I don't think anyone would debate why they're doing it and the sense it makes to do it. Obviously, they don't want people filling data centers full of 1,000 Titan Vs instead of buying Tesla cards.
Right.
That makes sense to everyone, I think. However, this sort of sticking point I have is that they use this term data center, which they don't define anywhere in the EULA,
Right.
as you might normally expect with a contract that they define certain terms as they go along. That's, if you've ever read through one of those things, that happens. So I have a feeling that education is kind of the part that would get a bit screwed here. So if you're a mid-sized university with a small CS department, it's not an area that you sort of focus on, and you want to buy 5 Titan Vs and put them in some machines so that students can use them to train, or researchers or professors, whatever, can use them to train.
Right.
How do you know that what you're putting them in is not what NVIDIA considers a data center?
Sure.
So like when I went to UC in the CS department, they built a sort of a cloud where you could kind of section off some stuff if you wanted to like run a web app and you just needed a development environment, and so that they could teach OpenStack for like open source virtualization stuff in the field. And that was maybe 2-3 U boxes in a rack with associated switches and stuff like that. Is that a data center? Like if they wanted to put a Titan V in there so that people could use it for deep learning projects, is that against the EULA? Is that a data center?
Right.
It's just these weird gray lines that I don't like about it. I wish they would have defined the term.
Yeah. When Jim came up with the thought process of like a data center is like art, you know it when you see it, right? And in that way, it sounds stupid, but I kind of agree, right? In that if I see, you know, a hodgepodge rack with 2 video cards in it and cables all miswired and you know, power running from 3 different outlets because they didn't actually have power run for the system set up correctly, you think, okay, you know what, I'm gonna let that guy go. If there's 3 full racks and there's 40 GPUs in there or 60 GPUs in there, and you go, okay, maybe now we'll have that concern. Now that is a problem for NVIDIA because now they're kind of going to be in this policing state. I would argue that they probably have no interest in pursuing any of this, with the exception of the
large
super
offenders.
highest end customers, people who are trying to buy 1,000 Titan Vs for $3,000 instead of 1,000 Tesla V100s for $9,000, right? Because now all of a sudden the difference is $6 million in income.
Yeah.
But I think people, if you're using 10, 20, 30, it's probably not even going to be an issue there.
Yeah.
Why they wouldn't define that specific number seems reasonable to me because they don't want to have to stick to that number.
Sure.
Right? Because
that number is a moving target.
well, like I said before, it's like if the number is 20, well, then you buy 20 and I buy 20 and Alex buys 20 and now we have 60.
Yeah.
Right. But they're all, it's 20, it's 3 different organizations. Can we get around their loophole that way? It's
in the same point.
But actually, I was bringing up something before before you move on about the when you were setting up that cloud infrastructure. If you're using a Windows environment for that, right? There are some features that you have to have a Windows Server edition to get some, storage array capabilities or something like that.
Sure.
Regardless of whether or not you're running it to attach to one computer or 50 computers or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
so there's precedent for like.
But this isn't like an additional driver that enables deep learning. It's the driver.
Yeah. Sure.
Like if you want to use, if you didn't want to do deep learning, if you just wanted to, I don't know, let's say I'm a student organization and we got some funding for some reason and we wanted to fill a couple racks full of machines with 1080 so that people could come in and use them.
Right.
And rack was just the easiest way to organize everything. We've got like KVMs run or whatever.
Sure.
Is that a data center?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Right.
And my problem is sort of the moving target. If they don't define it, then they could just I don't think they're necessarily going to. They could just suddenly come to you one day and say, you're violating our EULA.
They could.
We didn't think you were yesterday, but today,
sure,
we have determined you're violating our EULA.
Yeah.
As we were talking earlier in the studio, all the issues with this gray area could have been resolved by just a slight change in terms. Don't say in a data center. This is retail product. This is not enterprise product. There is no warranty or guarantee for fitness in an enterprise environment.
Well, then you have to define enterprise environment in the same way you would define data center, right?
Yeah.
Because their claim is that, NVIDIA addresses the unique mechanical, physical, management, functionality, reliability, and availability needs of servers with our Tesla products, which include 3-year warranty covering data center workloads, NVIDIA enterprise support, guaranteed continuity of supply, and extended SKU life expectancy for data center components. This has been communicated to the market since the Tesla products were first released. Insinuating that Titan and GeForce do not have that.
They're not just saying that if you do this, we won't support you. They're saying you cannot do this. Which is a difference.
Yeah. Does you breaking the EULA of your product then give them the legal right to void your warranty in some case? Maybe.
Well, absolutely. I don't know.
But is that what they have to do to make your warranty void?
So if you look at the EULA and you look at the terms, if you violate the EULA, they say you must delete the software from your computer, so you cannot use the product. So. Sure. They could have warranty terms that say something like, if you're using this for data center applications, then your warranty is void. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure what warranty law is.
That sounds like something that would be
it's different in the
illegal
US versus it's definitely that wouldn't be legal in the EU, I would imagine.
Right.
But so I like warranty and the product are separate things.
Yeah, but I think the warranty issues are interesting because some states don't let companies void warranties.
I think that's all,
right?
also
that probably has something to do with it.
Point.
But to me, it's in there to protect them if they feel like they're being taken advantage of.
Sure,
right?
I absolutely understand why it's there, but I'm not necessarily okay with that.
I still support the release of the Titan V. I still support like what the intent was, right? The intent is for a guy who has an idea to be able to have the best, most performant machine learning GPU on their desk to use to prototype, to develop, and create these products, right? It's for me as a company to buy my 10 top engineers for their workstations so that they can create the best products. But it's not intended for me to deploy on a 1,000 card level into a server environment.
Sure.
Now, I think if it were possible for NVIDIA to just go, like, if you do that, like, you're on your own, like warranty void, no support, whatever.
That's probably sticky
what they
enough,
wanted to
sticky
do.
enough in a bunch of different territories. That's not necessarily possible.
Now that I think more on it, that's probably what they wanted to be able to say, but maybe they couldn't say legally because of EU restrictions or other stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know if the type of person who would like kind of go subvert around this stuff and launch a data center with 1,000 GeForce cards instead of Teslas would care about their warranty. They would, like, you could buy two Titan V's for the price of one Tesla V100.
Right, but
so do you care about your warranty then?
If you're deploying at that level of scale, you're gonna pony up the extra cash.
I'm not talking about proper deployments. I'm talking about kind of shady operations.
Right, but if you're a shady operations, are you gonna be looking at the EULA anyway?
No, you're not.
I mean, do you care?
Also, if you're, I would argue that if you're deploying something, it is to sell something or offer a service, and
Sure.
so you would care about that availability, support, uptime, thermal guarantees. Even though, like, I'm sitting here, I don't think there's a drastic difference between the PCB or the chip or the integration of the Titan V that there is on a Tesla V100, right? There's a cooler, obviously, integration difference because of
Well,
how
I don't know
they're
what the
mounted.
add-in card looks like. For
It
the
might be
V100.
similar.
It's probably.
But like I've never been somebody who says, "Oh my gosh, the Quadro is such a different card than the GeForce," right? It's clearly not the case. And
No,
the same thing
especially not
for
anymore.
Tesla, to be fair. But those are the like it's just like in the beginning days when you had to hack a text file to get Adobe software to recognize your GeForce GPU instead of your Quadro GPU, right? And you had to do that for some period of time, and then they eventually just added support in for the GeForce GPUs and went about their business.
And the other interesting thing about this is, I think it's mentioned in the CNBC article, is that it only applies to drivers going forward. So I guess it might have applied to a driver that came out on the 20th,
Right.
which means that if you want to do deep learning at data center scale on a Titan V, there is one driver you can use.
That's true. You can still download that driver or have that driver.
Yeah. Which
But
is
any-
interesting
any-
because, like, I don't think the TensorFlow performance isn't going to change at all.
I would bet the next revisions of the containers don't support that driver.
I don't know if that's a thing you can do, but that's fine.
Oh, well, or
I don't
performance
know what the
improvements
Docker
in the-
calls the host OS look like.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Fair
that's a
enough.
whole separate thing. But
Fair enough. All right, let's get into our last story. Jeremy wrote this up, but he's not here. Wait a minute, why isn't he here?
he's flying home.
He still wrote the story up today. Good for him. Okay.
Yeah.
Where was he at? He was
Montreal.
in Montreal, wasn't he? Yeah.
At home.
AMD a little too far ahead of the curve again. This was a Digitimes story. What were we looking at here, guys? This was them integrating technology too early and kind of suffering for it. Is that what this was about?
You should click back through the article to see if they fixed any of the typos in it.
There were a
it was-
significant
there
number
were
of typos
just,
on this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They called Vega. What did they call it? No, they haven't fixed any of them.
No.
Radeon Vage
That's true. Where's that at? Yeah, the Radeon Vage chip.
and HMB based products.
HMB based products. So this is basically telling us that remember the hybrid memory cube? Those are things we were talking about last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they use a similar vertical stacking process. What is this telling me? I didn't read this beforehand. This Jeremy
It's just
wrote
that
this up.
the HBM has been increasing in popularity, I think.
They are indeed and being applied to different products. The Nirvana chip from Intel is using HBM2. Apparently, a lot of networking controllers use HBM. They said the first generation of HBM. I don't know about HBM2.
Intel announced an Altera FPGA with HBM2, I believe, on it recently.
I will give Joe Macri and the guys at AMD a lot of credit because they
saw it coming.
They saw this coming. They told me this was going to happen. Like, basically, the premise for when there was a lot of crap coming on about Vega using HBM2 and the cost of HBM2 and whether or not they should have gone with GDDR5 or 5X instead. Macri's stance to me was that we believe in HBM as a memory technology. HBM2 is a memory technology. And we knew that if there wasn't a high volume driver for it, like a consumer graphics card volume driver for it,
would never get off the ground.
It would never be developed.
Yeah.
Or it would never be developed enough to be useful for them in the next generation when they needed it. And everything would slow down because NVIDIA had been shipping HBM2 parts, but only in Tesla V100. Only in super high margin, they sell them for $9,000 a piece, as we've just been talking about. They don't have to worry about what the cost is, or what the margins are that Samsung is making.
The GP100 was also HBM.
Yeah.
HBM, I guess it was HBM2. It wasn't HBM1, was it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. So now we're starting to see the other chips using this, and SK Hynix. Did they say SK Hynix? Is actual in production yet? They don't say specifically. I know last time I had this conversation, SK was still
ramping up
in the beginning stages of actually offering availability, which would be a big increase for it. Now, obviously, for Vega, it's a little bit too little, too late. right?
Yeah.
Like it missed its way. It missed its chance at opportunity to be a successful product. I don't think the memory technology was the reason for it being or not being a success, except for maybe a success from like profits on an AMD standpoint.
Yeah, because it still costs a little bit more money to implement an HDBM solution.
correct.
But if you think about it,
I'm
what's
thinking.
coming up soon that doesn't use an
CES.
interposer
CES.
other than
You're
CS?
talking about Kaby Lake G?
Yeah,
Yeah, that uses HBM as well.
It has.
it
to.
does.
I'm really
And-
curious what its what its run will look like. Like how many of these processors is Intel going to make?
Not a lot.
I don't feel like it's a huge number. I would like for it to be a huge number. I think it's actually a really compelling product.
I'm
in its
excited for it.
wattage
Do you think it's going to be
scale.
30,000 to 100,000 or more like a million?
I would go with the first. That's more towards the first estimate. It's a very niche
So
product.
here's what determines what that answer is. Does Apple use it? Does Apple
Yeah.
decide in their next
Yeah.
MacBook Pro that they don't want to use a discrete chip anymore? They want to use this integrated, Intel part. That will be a big determining factor because not only does it drive
Man, that's such
Apple
a compelling
sales-
part for them. They have to use it, right?
not only does it drive Apple's
They're
margins,
gonna use
it
it.
will drive interest by the other OEMs to make sure that they're not missing something and being left behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so your Dells, your HPs, your Asus, they're all going to integrate a part based on this. My
I think
understanding
it's
is
going to be bigger than you think, Ken.
I hope so.
I think that
I absolutely hope
it's going
so.
to think.
I hope
Yeah,
that.
no, I mean, it's so nicely integrated. It's such a small overall part.
How
And
expensive
it
is
just is so logical.
the interesting
And
question.
you've got a retina display of many thousands of pixels that you want to have
Don't use that
3D
term.
content on. You want to do potentially some VR things, some basic
But-
stuff maybe in the future
So-
that Apple may or may not be doing.
Yeah. So how expensive do you think this integrated solution would be versus like integrating a mid-range NVIDIA GPU into your product? I know that's not really an estimate that we can make, but do you
I think initially
the cost
it's
of
going
this
to
is
be
gonna be super high?
expensive, but once they start ramping up and HBM2 memory becomes less expensive and they figure out more of the issues of Intel's, because it's not a full interposer, it's their, I can't remember, SMIC, what
Oh,
can't-
SMIB,
the hell.
SMIB.
yeah.
Yeah. And once they get
SMIB.
all that figured out, it's not going to be.
I think
Exceptionally
that
more? And I mean, you're going to
Yeah.
have less chips. You're going to have less PCB complexity.
Yeah. It absolutely makes sense as a product. I just think that if Intel isn't if Intel's a little shy on it and isn't super aggressive, then it will be such an expensive part to begin with that no one will integrate it, and it'll be sort of
I'm sorry,
a
it was-
snowball effect.
it's EMIB, by the way,
EMIB.
embedded
That-
multi-die
that's
interconnect bridge.
The other one didn't sound quite right, but I
SMIB.
didn't know what it
EMIB.
was.
Yeah,
SMIB.
I think the EMIB is a really, really interesting part of that.
Absolutely.
I'm also really curious. I want to make sure this is yes. Intel is also going to be responsible for the entirety of the driver stack in this product, right? So there's still some questions about how that's going to work, and
Intel's responsible for the driver?
Intel is
So basically, AMD is
Intel-
going to open source their latest driver to the Intel driver team.
I would say,
Or are they going to deliver binary blobs for
That's-
like the
that's what I would
graphics
guess.
portions that
I
they
would
build
guess
an
Alright.
that,
application around?
AMD basically provides them their driver block as they go, but it's up to Intel's team to package it, release it.
Man,
So there's questions behind
how
that, right?
fast are they going to be at that?
I have told them several times that
Does
they
it
need
matter?
to be very fast.
Yes.
Look at how
Yes, it
current
matters.
Intel graphics driver support is.
Exactly.
Wait, I don't understand what argument
It's
you're
terrible.
taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's
So
old.
that needs
That's
to be
why they
fast.
need to be way better at this if they have a part that can actually do something.
Exactly. I would agree with that.
Yeah, but they're forcing software guys to dumb stuff down. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a good situation, but I'm saying that's where it is.
So
Yeah.
what I would imagine would happen is AMD says, "Hey, partner, semi-custom partner, Intel, we're going to give you here's our driver. for the Radeon, Intel says, "Ooh, good, wrap in blue and submit." Right? That's what they should do. It should be like a 15-minute process. Replace skin, replace product ID, send out to the thing, right? And they should force all partners, Dell, Asus, HP, to not require them to distribute the driver. It should be allowed Intel to distribute the driver. NVIDIA has done very good at this, about forcing their partners to let us install GeForce.com drivers on our notebooks. AMD's been pretty good at it, but not
They haven't
perfect.
had much of a chance to be good at it lately.
Intel needs to make that case.
They're pretty up with the Weekle stuff, and so you send your Weekle core to
I don't
Intel
want
and they
only
just
Wickle
repackage
drivers
it.
to be installed. Sometimes
Yeah,
you want day
want-
one drivers that aren't Wickle certified for that game that just came out.
Yeah.
Right, and that's really what it comes down to.
How is, I mean, what's Intel's stance on beta graphics drivers at this point? Do we know?
I don't know if they've ever done anything like that. I will give Intel credit; they have done better. Like I have gotten emails from PR teams about like, hey, we've updated driver support games like on day one. You know, like PUBG was something that they kind of mentioned, right? And I'm sure it's very, very, very modest support, but they're trying. Hopefully, they're going to take this more seriously. And
honestly, it seems like from
Anyway.
everything we've seen, they don't have the corporate culture to do that, to support graphics on the software side seriously.
Brian Krzanich,
Doesn't
Intel
mean that they
CEO,
couldn't,
came
but-
out last week and said what? He said, we're going to take more risks. We're going to take more challenges. We're being attacked from people in different directions. We're going to be a different Intel going forward in 2018.
Easy to
Maybe
say.
this is a part of that.
Difficult to do.
We'll see systems at CES. I don't know what we'll get in terms of performance or when the systems will actually be available, but we'll see systems at CES. So be prepared for that, guys. All right, hardware, software picks of the week. Yes.
One more thing on the
Oh wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Josh found a really interesting thing on the NVIDIA side, that the NVIDIA warranty terms
Yes.
as of June 2016 prohibit data center use.
Do that.
So not intended for data center use and or GPU cluster commercial developments, enterprise use. Any use of warranty product for enterprise use shall avoid this warranty. So that's been in the GeForce warranty clause since July 2016.
Yeah.
So more to think about.
Fair enough.
It sounds like there's nothing really new here with the
Well, the
EULA
EULA
change.
thing is different.
The other thing is you cannot use our software, which is kind of the only software to use.
Right.
Yeah.
The open source Linux drivers
I
are
would
not.
still, even with that language in place, I would still maybe think that this is their way of solidifying that warranty-less. Because again, the person who's doing something, who's trying to save $6,000 a card, they don't need enterprise support. They're also probably not the ones going, EULA, oh, cancel the download.
Yeah.
Right. But we'll see. Before we get to the hardware software picks, we did have one more new patron from Todd Hebert. Hebert is a $3 pledger now. Thank you very much, Todd. All right, now hardware software picks of the week. This is mine. Neither hardware nor software. It's a book. I guess there's a Kindle version. Is there? No, there's
Not yet for that
hardcover,
edition.
paperback. Hardcover is cheaper. Interesting. So this is Computer Architecture 6th Edition, a quantitative approach by John Hennessy and David Patterson. I bought this last week. No, 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah, it's about 3 weeks now.
Because
Only $109.
it was $90 when I bought
110
it.
if you round up.
Yeah.
Wait, the hardcover is less expensive than the
Significantly less
paperback.
expensive.
Yeah. I don't really get it. Oh, wait.
Oh,
What the hell?
beta edition. What?
This edition is only available from third-party sellers. This is the version they told people to buy to edit, copy edit. I don't
Weird.
know. So I believe it was the first or second edition that I bought when I was in school, right? And this was the book that was my kind of EE base going forward. So I wanted to buy it and see what had changed because they talk about
Which, by the way, as I've discovered since you've been talking about this book, this is the book.
yeah.
Like my roommate handed me the 4th edition. He's like, "Oh, I got that book."
Yeah. So this and they've updated it to include stuff as recent as the Skylake architecture, I was a little disappointed on the GPU side. They only go up to like a GTX 480.
I think there's newer than that in there from the
The
information I was reading.
other thing I don't agree with this is they call like big data centers
Oh no,
warehouse scale computers.
that's just a that's a term.
That's a term.
Yeah, that's
I don't like
absolutely a
that at
term.
all. Warehouse scale. So you're telling me if I've got if I've got 2 racks in my corner, is that a data center or warehouse
Oh, good
scale?
Lord.
Right?
Like
we're gonna
the
have that
idea
debate
of
again?
warehousing and data warehousing is more of like an IS term than a CS term.
Yeah.
So they do have like putting it all together, embedded versus server GPUs and Tesla versus Core i7, right? So it's
Yeah.
fairly modern stuff, and they give it's still a book, and so it's still slightly out of date. There was a discussion here about storage technology where they talk about HAMR, heat-assisted magnetic reading, and how hard drives are basically dead because HAMR will never really be successful.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 3 months ago, we went to talk to Western Digital. They released MAMR, magnetic, microwave assisted magnetic reading. Wait, whatever it is. MAMR is the abbreviation, the enunciation.
That being said, this was published November 23rd. So if you add in lead time for editing and this
it's
is
brand
still,
new. Yeah, it's brand
this
new.
is a brand new edition.
And so it is $110, but if it's something you're interested in, even you don't have to be in school for it, but you like interested in architectures, and maybe you want to learn about things like XORs, vector architectures, strided loads, compare units, predicate XORs, those types of things. You can do that in here. And you can see from my bookmark, I'm not very far in yet for this one, but I am learning about the MIPS bit here.
You're learning
I mean,
so fast.
And if you go to the publisher's website, which is the first result on Google, it's $82.46 for the paperback right now, and they have the ebook for $94.95.
For some reason, this type of book is not interesting to me as an ebook.
Sure.
It's a book I need to like flip through. I need to be able to like
I
look
wouldn't
at
mind having it on a
diagrams.
Kindle, I would say, but
You need to be able to scribble on it.
Yeah, not
Hey,
only that, but you can have multiple tabs,
Like
sticky
dog
notes
ears.
and areas.
Yeah,
yeah, but being
Yeah.
able to control F through a textbook is
That's
also a
true.
very powerful thing.
I would like the ability to control F through a paperback.
And this is, since it's from the publisher, this is a ACSM Adobe content protected stupid ebook, so you can't put it on a Kindle. Kindle is the one device you can't put it on.
This is actually here's a good machine learning thing for somebody to do, right? This book, feed it into an AI learning platform, so I can say,
That's not how this
talk
works.
to my Echo, and I can say, hey, where's the section where it talks about Tesla architecture memory access? And it would say, turn to page,
That's what an index is
322
for.
Yeah, but like you don't know the specific term, right? You just know the ideas that the pages were talking about. This is something that they should do. I'm on it. Anyway, that's a book.
Yeah,
That's
very
my
good.
recommendation. Who's
Nice.
next? Josh,
Me,
what do you got?
cough suppressant for child in the background, maybe even for you.
Got it. Yeah.
No, on this trip that I had, what is it? A stitch in time saves 9. So if you were to go to Amazon and buy this charger that flips into your power port and has 2 USB ports into it for $7.50, is so much nicer than the $25 unit you can buy at a gas station because your kids absolutely need it. I think this is a good idea. You just should do it.
Easy to have, 24
Because
watt.
children,
Does it get
What?
hot? Did you notice if it got hot? 24 watts is a lot for that little tiny device.
yeah, well, you know what?
Hey,
It's better than nothing.
not mine. All right.
It's better than $25 for a crap.
Oh, sure. Just like, and those $1 cables they sell on the counter at gas stations that last literally 0 charges.
Yeah.
Those are good too.
Yeah.
Ken?
So I know you're a big fan of this sort of ecosystem, but
Yeah.
the Sonos Play 1, there have been a lot of sales on it recently. This is the best one I've seen. $140 for one of the Play 1 units, which is sort of their lowest end unit. Sonos being a networked audio solution that works fantastically well from what I've seen when you've used it at your place.
Is this the one that they just recently hacked? It'll play nice things for you.
Yeah, there's something about the Sonos API being hacked, but it was like very little units affected. I don't know. I didn't look fully into that. So maybe. So that could be fun. But networked music throughout your house, being able to sync different zones, it works seamlessly. It's super easy to set up. You can control it by voice from a Amazon Echo now. This is not the Sonos One ONE, which has Alexa built in and will be getting Google Home in the future. That is still a $200 product. But for $140, it's the best price I've ever seen on a Sonos.
Their speakers are surprisingly good.
Yeah.
I have two Sonos Play ones in the house. And they're really nice speakers. Right? Like one's in the master bath. Turn on the Moana soundtrack for my daughter when she's taking a bath. And she doesn't complain about the sound quality at all. So that's a good sign at least. But then again, she's also listened to the Moana soundtrack on the Echo Dot. And it's fine with that. And that sounds awful. It sounds like dog poo.
Another cool thing about this stuff is so the Sonos One is, I mean, it's a mono setup. They don't shove two speakers in there because you wouldn't get any real stereo separation from it.
Yeah.
Anyways, but you can link two of them together in their software to create a stereo pair. So if you wanted like a bookshelf setup, you could get two of these, which admittedly would be a bit pricey, but you could have both those set up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Alex, you got one?
I do. I have been, much to the annoyance of my wife, been rocking out to this band. It came up on Amazon for me about 2 weeks ago. They are Big Giant Circles. It's 8-bit chiptune. And everything I listened to by them has been pretty epic in the RPG sense.
8-bit chiptune?
Oh, yeah.
I can understand why your wife is annoyed with you.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I've really been digging them. They have all their stuff up on Bandcamp. Check them out. It's like $8 for the album. The red one right below the scroll point's the one I've been rocking out to mostly recently. It's also on Amazon Music, so you can check it out there. So
very cool. There was a comment I saw in the chat that I wanted to mention, and now I can't find it anymore, and I don't remember what it was about. So very cool story, I guess. That's going to be it for us this week, guys. Thank you for joining us. PCPro.com/podcast. You can go there and find download links, RSS files, YouTube links, links to all the stories that we've talked about or discussed. They'll all be included at PCPro.com/podcast. And well, thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week. We'll have another episode before we leave for CES. Jeremy will probably be back. Alan might be back.
We have no idea where Alan is.
But we'll be here. And that's really all that
I'm going to be here.
About. Josh will be here.
That's so nice.
I'm not going anywhere.
Josh goes nowhere ever again. It's very true.
Pretty much.
So with that, everyone, just want to say thank you, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, guys. Good night. Bye.
See ya.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's going to be 2018 when we come back again. 2018.
Yeah, you're right. It will be.
I was born in 1972. Do you know how long when I was in high school and I did some calendar programs to see what happened in 2010 and made some little things? It seems so far away. And now we're in 2018. It's so far away. Life goes really fast, so you need to enjoy it. So anybody younger than 45, don't do what I did. Good night.
I found the comment that I wanted to point out before. It's from Toilet Bug, who says, it's talking about the book. Says, I need this on Audible so I can play it in the house stereo when I want my friends to leave. That would do it.
You screwed that up, Ryan. You need to leave it enough of a gap so Alex could use that entire rant as the closing of the podcast, but you talked over him.
Did I?
It's fine.
You did.
It's fine.
Let me read a random section, see if this works for Toilet Bug's uses. Many processors with out-of-order execution and even some with simply deep pipelines decouple the instruction fetch and sometimes initial decode using a separate instruction fetch unit, see Chapter 3. Typically, the instruction fetch unit accesses the instruction cache to fetch an entire block before decoding it into individual instructions. Such a technique is particularly useful when the instruction length varies. You good?
You should just record this and sell it as an audio book.
I'm sure that's legal. What's the EULA on this book? Because the
one will
instruction
ever
cache
find
is
out.
accessed in blocks, it no longer makes sense to compare miss rates to processors that access the instruction cache once per instruction. You should probably try to read these with like a lot of inflection.
Yeah,
and
you need to put a
emotion,
spin on it. You
Right,
gotta-
something
you
that
gotta-
makes it feel like it's a
Not like
fiction
every
ti-
professor I ever had in college.
like a fiction title.
Pretend you're talking about him putting his purple knight in her love pudding.
No. Speculation and memory.
Yeah, Josh, you're
access.
supposed to be the old mature one here, aren't you?
One of the major
No.
techniques used in advanced
old speckled
pipelines
one.
is speculation, whereby an instruction is tentatively executed before the processor knows whether it is really needed. Such techniques rely on branch prediction, which if incorrect, requires that the speculated instructions are flushed from the pipeline. There are two separate issues in memory systems supporting speculation: protection and performance. And I'll see you guys next class for the follow-up. Yeah.
I don't know if it would be better to read that book or go find like an open courseware class that's teaching from that book.
Well, first of all, you have to go somewhere for that.
No,
You
you don't.
have to go to a class.
No, an open courseware class, like
I don't know what that
recorded,
means.
like
Open
like
courseware.
yeah, like there are schools like MIT that record lectures.
Sorry, when I was in school, we had to go to a classroom and listen.
Okay, so did I because
Did you know Professor Bose had a class at MIT and he talked all about audio?
Oh, good. I
And
thought
he
you were gonna say
knew
something different.
the lecture room so well he could throw his voice anywhere. He was amazing.
yeah, you can
It's just like that, Ryan.
you can take.
It's amazing going to
computer
MIT in
system
the early
architecture
90s. Professor Bose. Things.
from
Classroom.
MIT taught in fall 2005.
I bet it's out of date.
I bet it's out of
Professor
date
Bose.
by a couple of years. So that's the issue
Professor
with this.
Bose was
Shut up.
gone from his company by the time.
Oh, he was.
Anyway.
He'd quit.
But when I was learning things like calculus, which don't fucking change, and my professor was awful, watching a lecture from a good school was actually very helpful.
It's not a good school. It's just a good professor.
MIT's not a good school.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't matter if it's a good school.
Sure,
if it's
but
a
good schools
professor.
tend to have more good professors, I would say, on a whole.
I don't know.
It's
I've only ever
universal
been to
rule.
one university, so I don't know. Josh, how many universities did you go to?
2.
Fancy.
He's so much smarter than you.
Yeah. No, I'm dumb.
Oh.
I did bad in the first one, and then I
Fair.
had to go to the second one.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was just leaning over towards me. I was
Well,
a
you
little
know,
worried.
Sometimes you just need to lean.
No. Not really. Let's see. What else is going on? Nothing. Josh, how was your trip? Was it fun?
Scrapping. But that was fine. You know what? We all arrived at our destinations unscathed.
Well, that's good.
And I'll tell you, $90 of gas versus $1,600 of airfare,
It's compelling.
it's kind of worth it. I mean, my
What if you
children
could
will
fly
be
private
scarred
for
for
just-
life.
$2,000 an hour.
Yeah. No, I can't afford my brother.
Does the
In many
hours
ways.
start when the pilot gets to the airport or when the plane takes off?
I'm sure when it gets to the airport.
Yeah, there's a lot of pre-flight stuff you gotta do.
Yeah.
What if I want to say I'm comfortable if we skip the safety check to save me about $2,000?
They will not do that.
Let's just
No,
go. No.
no.
All right.
There's when you get in there, when the pilots get in there, they do their pre-flights.
Yep.
That's probably not in it. As soon as the passenger arrives and they start up the jet, do all then the pre-flights of actually things running.
Yeah.
That's when they start charging you. But the walk around and preparing everything and the emergency commode, that's very important.
Mm.
Yeah.
Especially on a
Yeah.
14-hour flight. So lots of
I hear you on that.
Emergencies.
I hear you on that.
Yeah. Biscuits and mustard.
Yep.
What is happening?
Nobody knows.
We just embraced our inner
Sling
Kentuckians.
blade, man. Sling blade.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Parachutes are extra. Oh well.
You know, I think I may go watch Bright with my wife. Anybody watch that yet?
I
I
haven't.
thought it was pretty good. Like
I've
it-
heard it's
I've heard it's
fun,
bad,
but not deep.
I mean, I want it to be bad.
it-
why would you want it to be
it's
bad?
a
No, I'd
Netflix
like to-
action
like,
flick.
I would
It's-
like to watch a bad, cheesy action movie.
Why would you like to watch
Well,
a
then
bad cheesy one as
Sharknado
opposed to a
6
good
is
one?
coming out soon.
Exactly.
I thought it was an entertaining movie. It's not like this big philosophical, why is humanity kind of thing, but it was a pretty good flick.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
All right. Well, Josh, you have fun
Alright.
with that. Bye.
Yeah, I need to have interaction with my wife other than just having her sit in the passenger side of my car for 16 hours. 2 times
Yeah.
in a
Turn the
week.
camera off, please.
Okay.
Keep the microphone on, though.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey. Oh, it's Ken.
What's happening here is I am subtracting.
Maybe that wouldn't be the best way to learn.
You can't stop laughing throughout the whole thing. All right, everybody. We're going to end our show. Thanks for joining us. It's just not the same without Josh.
Nope.
Bye.
Bye.